What's up, Goonies? What's up, Otter Squad? It's that time of the month again. What time? Otter Raft Bushcraft Project of the Month. If you're new here, Otter Raft Project of the Month is something that I host. My name is Eve, or Otter. Either way, it's fine. But I put on a challenge, if you will, a bushcraft project. I change it every month, so you have a month to do so. I try to get that video out the first of the month, or as close to as I can, with the specifications. So it'll be an object or a build, and I'll say, this is it, go. Now it can be made of natural materials, a combination of natural and man-made, or just man-made materials. It just depends, because I know some people don't have access to the forest and all the things that we love as bushcrafters and outdoors people. Some people have expressed concern to me that they live in the cities, or like in Texas, there's a lot of private land, so I just can't go out a lot of times and pick up and harvest whatever I want. When I specify these projects, just do your best to make it as natural and as true to form as possible. Now, as far as the project, unless it's very specific, use your imagination. There's tons of resources out there as far as examples, and I do my best to provide an example, but not all the time. So without further ado, welcome to the show. Let's get into the project of the month. May's project of the month is melee weapons, Melee May. And it got a lot of interest. A lot of people got very excited. They've already turned in awesome, stellar projects. And I'm super stoked about that, because that's the whole point, really, to me, is that, sure, the technical faculty, the skills and everything, that's a work in progress. We are always lifelong learners. Our skills are always growing, always changing. The tools that we use, the materials that we have access to, it's about the enjoyment to me. It's about the thrill of it. It's about just sharing joy with people, collaborating with people, asking each other questions, and getting inspired by each other. So that's the genesis of Otter Raft Bushcraft Project of the Month. Even if you're a beginner, an intermediate, or a seasoned professional, hopefully there's something here for you. The beginners, feel free to ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them as best I can, and if not, I'll try to point you, steer you in the right direction. And if you are a seasoned pro, do your best to elevate it. Do something very unique, very challenging, not only for yourself, but for inspiration, so that other people can see what is possible out there. And that to me is always exciting. I'm always learning from children when I'm instructing, all the way up to like Morska Hansky and Ray Mears and all these high-level people out there, just to name a few. Let's get into the project. This is when I'm gonna go behind the scenes and show you the building of this project. It kicked my ass. It was very difficult. I intentionally put a time constraint on myself. I used a bit of wood that I normally would never have access to. I went to a lumber store and got a very exotic bit of wood, which is super hard on the hardness scale of 1 to 10. This is somewhere 5, 6. So as far as the hardwood, it was a challenge. It took me about 5 hours to do today, because I wanted to do yesterday and today, but yesterday got away from me, and here we are. I was out in my garage sweating up a storm, and I had to pull out some actual tools to use. I had to use a couple different rasps, a whole bunch of sandpaper, hand drill, not a hand drill, but like an actual hand-powered drill, and a knife and a silky saw for hardwood. So it put me to task. I'm glad I got it done, but I pushed it to the limit. Will I do that again? Hopefully not, but I'm a sucker. So I'm always up for a challenge and a time constraint as well. Yeah, let's check out this footage. There you have it. This is the patu. This is a traditional handheld melee weapon from New Zealand, from the indigenous peoples of New Zealand, the Māori. Forgive me on my pronunciation. I do the best I can with what I have. So this is the patu. Now there's different versions of this. They make them out of whalebone and greenstone or stone, which is highly prized, of course, being a difficult material to work with. And this one is made out of wood. Now they have different names for it being made out of wood, whalebone, and stone, which I'm not gonna get into, but I highly encourage you guys to research that if this fits your trigger. So this melee weapon is for close quarters combat. This is a smaller version. They come in different shapes, but typically about yay big. And then they can have curves and all sort of ornate carvings on them for ceremonial reasons, and especially to go into war, because the Māori people are warriors through and through. From what I understand, I would love to go to New Zealand and experience that culture for myself. Not only is New Zealand a beautiful place that I've always wanted to go to, but I'm always inspired by warriors of the world and what they do and how they live and their history. So I'm a huge fan of warriors all over. Grew up in Japan a little bit, so the samurai, and it's just been part of me forever. I wanted to do this one because I got inspiration from the Māori people. Typically, they would have a sort of paddle shaped, they can be longer and everything like this, and they would string it with a short or a medium-sized lanyard to where they can wrap this around their wrist, drop it, twist it, and get a good grip on there so it doesn't fly away from their hands. And it's meant for chopping motions, stabbing, thrusting motions up under the ribs, up under the jaw. It looks highly devastating. This is a very hard wood. So when I went to the lumber store, I was trying to find wood to use, and I wanted it to be beautiful. I wanted it to be something exotic, something that I'd never used before. And this piece of wood is called padauk. It comes from the tropics in West Africa, and it is a very, very hard wood. The reason I wanted this is because it blends my love of music and luthier, so the building of instruments, and one of the first really nice bass guitars that I saw had this as a body wood, and I just fell in love with it. It's deep. I don't know how well this is coming up, but it's deep reds and almost browns, and I guess after it ages, it'll turn darker red and even purple, which is just gonna be cool to age with it. Did the best I could. I made a template, as you saw in the footage, and I did my best to provide the symmetry and get it just as true to form as I could, because I've never seen one of these in real life. I've only seen pictures, or I've only seen them in videos. So not having a real world working knowledge of this tool, I just did my best to try to pay homage to the Māori people and their warrior spirit and culture. And so you can see I tried my best to do symmetry and make it to fit my hand, okay? Because this would be my tool to go to war with. So flared base right here, so it doesn't slip out. It provides me just a little bit more grip and purchase on it. And then I also thought that maybe adding a little bit of a point here, a little bit of an apex there for a close-up sort of crushing motion, that were to come to that. And then typically I see them, they're more rounded off here, but I thought maybe just bringing that up to a slight apex there would provide just a little bit less surface area to provide more damage for, actual combat. Am I a combatant? I like to think sort of, kind of, but nothing like this. I'm always learning, and I would love to learn from the Māori people if I could get a chance to get over there. But this is my project of the month, again, Melee May, and I had a blast doing this. It put me to task. This wood provided its own challenges. It was very difficult to carve. Like I said, I had to break out woodworking tools when I traditionally try to stick to a folding saw and a knife as much as possible. But out in the bush, we need to be resourceful, and that's why these tools kind of came to be, because they were working with materials that just wouldn't respond to your typical classic knife and saw. If I had more time, I probably could have done this just knife alone, but that would have taken me probably the whole month, to be honest. Just the 5 hours, I was sweating up a storm, and some of the footage is absent because my phone kept overheating. It's hot in Texas, it's getting into summertime, and even though I was in my garage, it was overheating, so I had to pause, and I lost footage. So there's some things, like when I was doing the knife work, that are just missing, and I couldn't re-record it because I had already shaped it out. But I'm gonna do my best to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. Usually I'll carve in my house, but not sanding and all the things to, you know, big plume of wood shavings and everything like that. Lessons learned: never cut yourself short on time, if at all possible. If we're in a bushcraft survival sort of situation, we always want to try to be ahead of the curve as possible. If we find ourselves out there, we're probably behind the curve already. So things like fire gathering materials, fire prep, your food procurement, your water procurement, building your shelter, you want to do these while you have the energy, while you have the calories, while you have the mental cognition and focus to take care of these tasks. We always want to be leaning forward into this. Even when we're a little bit tired, take a rest, drink some water, nourish our bodies, get good rest, but we need to be leaning forward into these tasks. I purposely cut myself short and I almost didn't get this done. So it's a lesson learned. But I know that if I can make this happen in a short amount of time, relatively, I know that with a much softer wood, something like cedar, which is very bountiful here where I live in Texas, ash juniper, very similar, that I could make this no problem. Is it gonna be as durable? Not at all, but it'd get the job done if push come to shove. That's my project, the patu, the project of the month. Thank you all very much for joining me with this, and for all of you that participated, my heart goes out to you. I have a blast, and if you do create your projects, make sure to tag me, Otter Raft Bushcraft, collaborate with me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram and YouTube, and use the hashtag Otter Raft POTM, Otter Raft Project of the Month, and that way we can start building a collection and a repository of all the different projects that we're creating, to where we can look back in the future and see these projects and then get inspired by everybody else who's making these projects as well. Because you never know, just somebody else might do something, even if it's the same project, might do something just a little bit different and put their own personality, their own fingerprint on it, and it just might be all the difference, especially when it comes to construction methods and methodologies and the tools that they use. So when we're doing these projects, please include as much detail as possible. The history of the tool, if you know that, whatever the project is, what inspired you, if it was something you got off the internet or something from your own personal life, the relevance of it to you, the construction, what woods, materials you use, because like I said, they might be natural materials and they might be man-made materials at the same time. And so this is elk leather that I used for this. And this is very vintage. This comes from an elk from Oregon, and it's probably the better part of 20 plus years of age. So I use this just as far as it's symbolic to me. It comes from family and a good hunt and a good kill. So I use this as my leather wrap, just to take a bit of me and fuse it with a bit of this. But be sure to include the tools that you use, the brands, tag them in your posts as well, because any exposure we can get for these companies building the tools that we rely on and that we use to have all this fun and build these skills, it's important to put their name out there. If things worked, say what excelled. If things didn't work, say what didn't work. Don't be afraid to say, oh no, this, whatever happened. Don't be malicious with it, but just be like, I wish I would have had this tool. Maybe this wasn't the best knife for the job, or maybe this wasn't the best saw for the type of wood. Things of this nature. And I'd very much appreciate it, because we're trying to build these skills. That's what the Otter Raft is all about. If you don't know, sea otters hold hands to make sure that they don't float away, and they keep each other safe and accountable. And that's what the whole genesis of the Otter Raft is just to have a good time and pass down these skills and preserve these skills and keep them alive, because without people like yourselves, they would just be gone. They would just go and they would be in history somewhere, right? Now, I remember when people used to start fires and used to make wood projects and all these sorts of things. So let's together keep this alive and keep it good and healthy and make it an enriching experience for us all. And if you happen to know somebody who would be turned on by this, somebody who would want to participate in this, like I said, all ages, young to old, do the best you can with the skill set that you have, with the tools that you have, but pass it on to the other people if you can. Share it far and wide, and let's see how many people we can get practicing these skills that all of our ancestors share. As always, Goonies never say die. Otter Raft for life. Thank you.